It is really great to have you here with us today. We're pulling from a stack of material that is pretty much guaranteed to challenge the way you view the world around you.
Yeah, it's a fantastic set of sources.
Right. Specifically, we're looking at the February 2026 issue of Diversity magazine.
Hmm.
And this is a publication dedicated to exploring how education, technology, and parenting all kind of intersect to create environments where people of all abilities can thrive.
And our mission for this deep dive is to really look at the mechanics behind that inclusion. We want to explore how technology, education, and just sheer human resilience are actively redefining what it means to build an accessible world.
Because we usually just default to thinking about physical stuff,
Yeah.
right? Like putting a ramp next to some stairs or Braille on a sign.
Exactly. But the underlying theme of these sources is a massive shift from merely accommodating individuals to genuinely empowering them. It
Yeah.
introduces this vital mental model. Instead of forcing individuals to adapt to rigid, broken systems, we need to design systems that flex to the individual.
Which is exactly why, whether you are managing a team or, raising kids who practically live on their devices, or just someone curious about human potential, the insights here are going to be incredibly relevant to you.
It really is a complete shift in how we view capability. We are looking at a landscape where the very people who have historically been sidelined by poorly designed systems,
Right.
they are now leveraging advanced tools to become the architects of their own inclusion.
Okay, let's unpack this because we really have to start with the magazine's cover story. It profiles this young man from Northern Kerala named Srinidhi Kesavan.
Yes, an incredible story.
Srinidhi lives with quadriplegic cerebral palsy and dysarthria. Now, for those of us who aren't medical professionals, what does that actually look like in his day-to-day life?
Well, to understand his reality, you have to understand the physical constraints he's operating under. Quadriplegic cerebral palsy affects all four limbs, and in his specific case, it comes with severe spasticity.
Meaning his muscles are tight.
More than just tight, they are constantly, involuntarily contracting. It's a neurological miscommunication that makes even the slightest intentional movement an exhausting battle.
And the dysarthria.
That is a related motor speech disorder. So the muscles used for speech are weakened or really difficult to control, which alters the clarity and rhythm of his voice. Plus, he is dealing with chronic, severe pain that even high doses of morphine couldn't manage.
Wow.
Yeah, his physical body is essentially a locked door.
Which makes the trajectory of his life that much more compelling, honestly. There's this beautiful moment described in the text from October 2013 during the Vidyarambham ceremony.
Right, the traditional initiation into the world of letters for children.
Exactly. Srinidhi was 5, he couldn't hold a pencil, but a professor from the Chakshumathi organization sat him on his lap and with the one finger on Srinidhi's right hand that he could control.
Just one moving finger.
Yeah, just the one. The professor guided him to write his first letters in the sand. And it was this moment the world of education just opened up to him. He eventually went on to study English literature at Pioneer College.
Largely relying on audiobooks and his mother, who acted as his scribe.
Right. But that transition from relying entirely on his mother to becoming an independent actor in the world, that is where we see this concept of the system flexing to the individual.
Because Srinidhi is now an entrepreneur, and the way he achieved that through technology is frankly remarkable. Standard accessibility tools just didn't work for him.
He tried Dragon Firefly first,
He
right?
did. It's a very popular speech-to-text software on Windows. But software like that is trained on standard phonetic patterns. Because of his dysarthria, his speech includes stuttering and irregular phrasing.
So the software just couldn't understand him.
It simply couldn't parse it. It failed.
So how did he actually get around that? I mean, if the Premiere dictation software fails, what's the alternative?
He essentially had to build a bespoke acoustic model. Yeah. He pivoted to an Android device and utilized its built-in accessibility and speech recognition functions. Instead of relying on a pre-packaged understanding of English, he trained the operating system to recognize his specific voice prompts.
That's wild. So he mapped his unique vocal outputs to digital actions, even if they sounded irregular to a neurotypical ear.
Precisely. He taught the operating system his own personal dialect.
That is incredible.
And he's currently taking it even further. He's working with that same Chakshumathi organization to train a Gemini AI-powered virtual assistant on a Chromebook.
So layering modern AI over his custom voice training.
Exactly. He has created an environment where he can read, write, and manage a business seamlessly. He now runs a travel agency directly from his bed.
Curating accessible holidays, which is just brilliant.
And he co-founded SR Talks, a charitable trust that trains other children to use screen readers. He literally engineered his way out of his physical constraints.
Srinidhi's story is the perfect example of what happens when a person can finally bend the environment to their needs. But the magazine also highlights another story that shows the flip side.
The systemic friction.
Right. What happens when the environment demands that you constantly justify your existence? This is the journey of Angeline Lipika. She is a visually impaired computer science student from India who transferred to the University of the Ozarks in the U.S.
What's fascinating here is the stark contrast she observed between the two educational systems. Angela's story isn't about overcoming a lack of intelligence or drive. It's about overcoming that friction you mentioned.
Because in India, she noted that she was constantly required to prove her capability before she was even considered for an opportunity.
She had to over-explain her requirements and actively fight for basic accommodations just to access the curriculum.
And then she gets to the U.S. system, and that friction just vanishes.
Yes. When she needs accessible math materials or someone to describe a complex data graph for her coursework, she just asks, and it is provided. The burden of proof is gone.
Which feels like it should be the baseline everywhere.
That is the crucial takeaway here. True inclusion isn't just about handing someone a piece of software. It is about the baseline respect a system affords its users.
Removing the cognitive load?
Exactly. When a system inherently trusts its users and removes that constant need for self-advocacy, it frees up so much energy. Angeline can take all the energy she used to spend fighting the administration and channel it directly into being a computer science student.
Which brings up a really good point about how these environments are designed in the first place. The editor of the magazine, Ram Kamal, wrote a piece comparing different educational policy events he attended. And it paints a pretty clear picture of why some systems are full of friction and others actually work.
Yes, he offers a very candid observation of top-down policy versus bottom-up action. He attended a UNICEF national policy discussion in Delhi.
And what was his take on that?
His takeaway was that it felt entirely disconnected from the reality of the classroom. It was filled with formal presentations, polished language, but it lacked any real on-the-ground truth regarding the messy day-to-day challenges of inclusion.
Just theorists talking to theorists.
Exactly. But then he goes to the invoked 2026 conclave in Bengaluru, which is run by Chakshumathi. That's a grassroots education movement.
And he finds the exact opposite.
Because Invoked is focused on practitioners. The highlight of that conclave was the Chakshumathi Awards, which recognize educators actively solving these systemic issues in real time.
We are talking about interventions that you rarely see in high-level policy briefs.
Like Bascom Theba in Meghalaya. He revived a failing village school by throwing out the standard curriculum and embedding local indigenous knowledge into the lessons.
Or Kumari Gudi in Bihar, driving menstrual health and adolescent empowerment in highly marginalized areas.
And Nalori Subramaniam, who replaced rote memorization with inquiry-led, hands-on science instruction.
And they aren't just handing out plaques and sending them home. They announced a partnership with the ChildAid Network Foundation to scale these specific grassroots solutions. Their goal is to reach 2 million children.
Finding what works at the micro level and funding it for the macro level. It is a highly effective model.
But, as the magazine points out, this kind of practical, results-driven inclusion hasn't necessarily reached the corporate sector.
No, it definitely hasn't.
There is a review in the magazine of a theater production called Karvat, which means The Turn. It was produced by Radio Idan and directed by Danish Mahajan. And the play is a pretty harsh spotlight on corporate diversity initiatives.
It systematically dismantles the illusion of corporate inclusion.
Yeah, the main character, Pallavi, is a visually impaired woman with an MBA from an Indian Institute of Management. She is a top-tier candidate. But she hits this massive wall of corporate bias during her job hunt.
It really focuses on the gap between what companies say in their PR materials and how their HR departments actually operate. During one interview in the play, Pallavi is bluntly told they do not hire visually impaired individuals.
And when she points out the discrimination,
the interviewer flips it and accuses the disabled community of just having a complaining nature.
But the part that really stood out is the climax. Pallavi proves she can do the job perfectly using her smart glasses and a screen reader. The company offers her the job, but then immediately rescinds it.
Right.
And their excuse is that her third-party screen reader software represents a security risk for corporate data. Now, let me play devil's advocate here for a second. If a company is handling sensitive financial data, is there any actual validity to a screen reader being a security risk? Or is it a complete smokescreen?
It is almost entirely a smokescreen, and the play calls it out as such.
Yep.
While it's true that any third-party software interacting with an operating system needs to be vetted, enterprise-level screen readers are designed specifically with data security in mind.
So they don't leak data.
No, they can operate locally without sending data back to external servers. The security risk argument is just a convenient, technical-sounding excuse used to mask a fundamental unwillingness to adapt to the corporate infrastructure.
That makes total sense.
The play captures this perfectly. Pahlavi repurposes the famous disability rights slogan, "Nothing about us without us." She states that corporations have turned it into everything about us without us.
Meaning they love talking about diversity on paper, but refuse to include the actual people in the room. And this wasn't just a point made by the playwright either. IAS officer Manmeet Nanda from the Ministry of Social Justice was in the audience.
Yes, and she spoke afterward.
She explicitly called out that security risk excuse. She argued that tools like AI and assistive tech need to be viewed as inflection points for empowerment, not threats to be mitigated.
Her broader point was that legal mandates for hiring are insufficient. If the corporate mindset views an accommodation as a vulnerability rather than a tool, the system remains broken.
So what does this all mean when we move away from corporate policy and look at the actual tools being used in classrooms today? Because the source material gets very specific about how we are mainstreaming deaf and hard of hearing students in 2026.
And the technology has moved way past just turning up the volume on a hearing aid.
What are schools actually using?
Well, the technological leap is profound because it focuses on clarity rather than just amplification. Amplifying a noisy classroom just gives a student louder noise.
Right, that doesn't help at all.
Instead, schools are deploying tools that map and manage the acoustic environment. For example, Google Live Transcribe is heavily utilized. It's an AI-driven application that provides highly accurate, real-time speech-to-text on a student's tablet.
So it effectively cuts through the background chatter.
Exactly.
The source also mentions Auracast and Roger systems. How do those work in this context?
Auracast is a massive shift. It allows a teacher to broadcast their voice via Bluetooth directly into the hearing aids of an unlimited number of students simultaneously.
Wow.
It completely replaces the old, bulky neck loop students used to wear. And for environments with severe acoustic challenges, the Roger or FM systems are still the gold standard.
How does that one work?
The teacher wears a lapel microphone that acts almost like an acoustic laser beam. It streams their voice directly to a receiver on the student, bypassing the ambient room noise entirely.
But it's not just about the hardware. The magazine emphasizes that you can't just hand a kid a tablet and expect them to thrive. The environment itself has to change.
Yes, pedagogy has to adapt.
Teachers have to adopt the caption everything rule for any multimedia. Classrooms need to shift to U-shaped seating so the student has clear lines of sight to everyone's faces for lip reading and social cues, and they advocate for a buddy system.
Pairing the student with a hearing peer to catch incidental instructions that tech might miss.
Right.
This raises an important question, however, about the limits of mainstreaming. Placing a child in a standard classroom with neurotypical peers isn't a universally positive solution.
Yeah, the magazine includes a very thoughtful perspective from Arvind Kumar. He's an autistic author who works with neurodivergent children. He identifies a significant, often ignored flaw in full-time mainstreaming.
Behavioral mimicry.
This was a fascinating concept. We usually assume that putting a neurodivergent kid in a mainstream class is great for socialization, but Arvind points out that an autistic child might actually start mimicking the negative behaviors of their neurotypical classmates. Why does that happen?
It comes down to how the brain processes social context. A neurotypical child might act out or make an aggressive joke, but they possess an internal social filter. They can read the room, understand the context of the joke, and know exactly when to stop before crossing a line.
But many autistic children lack that specific social filter.
Precisely. They observe the behavior and mimic the action to fit in, but they don't understand the underlying context or the boundary. As a result, they are the ones who end up facing disciplinary action for a behavior they merely copied without comprehension.
So, if full-time mainstreaming creates that kind of hazard, what is his proposed solution?
Arvind advocates for hybrid programming. This is a deeply intentional approach. Instead of forcing a child to conform to an environment that overwhelms them, the child spends part of their time in dedicated sessions focused on sensory integration and occupational therapy.
And what about the academic portion?
It's built around a strength-based curriculum. So if an autistic student has a hyperfixation on complex machinery or music, you don't force them away from it to study a standardized syllabus.
You use it as the lens.
Exactly. You use that machinery or music to teach them math, reading, and science.
Here's where it gets really interesting, especially for the parents listening who are trying to manage their kids' environments at home. The magazine shifts focus to the digital world, specifically an article by Tarun P. on digital grooming.
Yes, his core philosophy for parents is to create a bridge, not a wall.
He argues that strictly banning devices or heavily monitoring everything usually backfires.
It backfires because it turns the digital world into forbidden fruit. And more dangerously, if a child encounters a predatory situation online, they won't seek help from a parent who uses a heavy-handed approach.
Out of fear that their device will simply be confiscated.
Exactly. Tarun suggests parents need to act as co-pilots. You need to understand the games they play and the platforms they use. He outlines 3 foundational pillars for this digital literacy.
Let's go through those. The first is the permanent ink rule.
Yes, this is teaching children that the internet has no erasure. Even if an app promises that a photo or message will disappear in 10 seconds, they must operate under the assumption that it is permanent and can be screenshotted or saved.
The second is the strangers are strangers rule.
This one is vital for the gaming generation. A child might spend 200 hours collaborating with someone on a multiplayer game and feel a deep sense of friendship.
But parents must reinforce that no matter how much time is spent interacting via avatars, if you haven't met them in the physical world, they remain a stranger.
And the rules of engaging with strangers apply.
And the third pillar is framing privacy as a superpower.
Instead of just listing things they shouldn't do, you frame their personal data as high-level intelligence that must be protected. Their real name, their school, their location.
So you empower the child to recognize red flags.
Yes, such as an online acquaintance asking for a secret to be kept from their parents or offering digital currency in exchange for personal photos. It's about equipping them to navigate the environment safely rather than just locking them out of it.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, everything we've discussed today, from Srinidhi's custom AI to hybrid classrooms to giving kids the tools to navigate the internet safely, it is all about creating harmony between an individual and their environment.
It is.
And the source material actually takes this idea to a really profound conclusion. They feature a summary of a keynote address given by Maharaja Dr. Tony Nader in Delhi.
Right, the neuroscientist and head of the Global Transcendental Meditation, or TM, movement.
He uses this ocean analogy to explain the fundamental nature of inclusion.
The analogy is quite powerful. Dr. Nader suggests that if you look at the surface of the ocean, it is chaotic. There are countless waves, all different shapes and sizes, crashing into one another.
And if human society operates only at that surface level, we only perceive differences.
We see other people as separate, foreign, or difficult to understand, which naturally breeds friction and conflict. At that level, inclusion is just a forced intellectual exercise. We have to constantly remind ourselves to be tolerant.
But then he says, if you dive beneath the surface using a technique like TM, you reach the deep, silent bottom of the ocean. He connects the silent depth to the Vedic concept of Atma, or the self, and to the unified field in quantum mechanics.
Yes.
Now, hold on. Quantum mechanics and Vedic philosophy in the same breath. For those of us who aren't theoretical physicists, what does that actually mean for a kid sitting in a classroom?
It sounds abstract, but the core idea is simple. At the most fundamental level of reality, whether you look at it through the lens of ancient philosophy or modern physics, everything is interconnected. There's an underlying unity. Dr. Nader's point is that when a person experiences that deep internal silence and recognizes that unity, inclusion stops being a forced behavior. You don't have to try to be empathetic because you intuitively understand that you are fundamentally connected to the people around you.
Empathy becomes a spontaneous byproduct of how your brain functions.
Exactly. And he backs this up with actual neuroscience, specifically looking at neurodivergent individuals. He points out that for autistic individuals where there can be misfiring or lack of communication between different regions of the brain, TM has been shown to increase brain coherence.
It literally helps the different parts of the brain communicate more effectively.
Which naturally improves self-regulation.
He also highlights the biological mechanics of TM for individuals with ADHD.
Yes. ADHD is often characterized by a lack of blood flow to the frontal cortex. And the frontal cortex is the brain's executive center. It acts as the braking system and the conductor for our attention.
So when it's understimulated, the brain constantly seeks external input.
Right. Fidgeting, distraction, just to wake that area up.
Yeah.
TM has been clinically shown to increase blood flow to the frontal cortex. By providing that area with the biological resources it needs, the brain achieves internal stability.
It removes the physical need for external chaos, allowing the individual to focus without the stress of forcing it.
It is the ultimate example of fixing the internal system to improve the external experience.
Okay, we have covered an immense amount of ground today. We started with Srinidhi building a custom language model to run a business from his bed. We looked at Angelin finding a system that offered baseline respect.
The reality of corporate lip service in the play Carve-Out.
The nuanced need for hybrid programming to avoid behavioral mimicry, and the deep neuroscience of meditation. And, there are two small details tucked away at the end of this magazine that really summarize the whole picture.
The first is a quiet practical tutorial section. It is a guide teaching mothers how to master NVDA, non-visual desktop access, keyboard shortcuts.
They aren't waiting for a specialized IT department to help their visually impaired children complete their homework. They are acquiring the technical skills to reshape their children's digital environment themselves.
And the second detail is an update on a team of 24 students from Andhra Pradesh. These are young people with diverse disabilities ranging from significant orthopedic challenges to low vision.
And right now, as we speak, they are trekking to the 17,582-foot Kardungla Pass in the Himalayas.
It's a literal manifestation of refusing to be limited by the environment.
Technology, policy, and pedagogy are all essential tools, but what we are really talking about is the human drive to participate fully in the world.
And this is why this matters directly to you. This deep dive demonstrates that accessibility is never just a niche accommodation for a few people.
No, it's not.
When we intentionally design systems for the margins, when we build technology that can understand dysarthric speech, when we create clear, empowering rules for digital safety, or when we demand corporate environments that actually integrate diverse tools rather than fearing them, we inevitably build systems that are more robust, adaptable, and innovative for everyone.
Designing for the edge cases stress tests the entire architecture, resulting in a better world for the majority. I want to leave you with one final thought to consider today. What if we completely flipped our perspective on what it means to be capable?
That's a great question.
We spend so much time assessing individuals, testing them to see if they fit into our schools, our software, or our workplaces. But what if we started viewing accessibility as the ultimate diagnostic tool for the environments we build? Think about it. If a corporate hiring process, a classroom structure, or a piece of software completely breaks down simply because a human being interacts with it in a non-standard way, maybe that person isn't the one who is disabled. Maybe the system itself is what's broken. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Keep questioning the systems around you, and we'll see you next time.